The human imagination has its limits. We can picture heat, we can picture cold, but there are thresholds the mind simply cannot reach. Before embarking on this journey, I thought I understood the cold. I had been on snowy mountain peaks. I had endured harsh winters in Northern Europe, but all of that, compared to where I was going, was merely a cool breeze to an eternal blizzard. The image that haunted me before the journey was a photograph I stumbled upon online. A wolf, frozen mid-stride. It died in a state of motion, its silver-gray fur coated in a thin layer of ice, its eyes wide open, staring into nothingness, as if death had struck so swiftly it had snatched life away in an instant. The caption read, "In Oymyakon, if you stop moving, you freeze." That sentence stuck in my mind, becoming a warning, a prophecy of what was to come. Our journey began in Moscow, a city still holding the warmth of civilization. A 7-hour flight took us eastward, over the majestic Ural Mountains, flying over the vast, immense Siberia. Looking through the airplane window, I no longer saw city lights, only an endless white, a pristine and seemingly forgotten land. We landed in Yakutsk, the capital of the Sakha Republic, the coldest city in the world. But Yakutsk, with its 40°C sea cold, was just the gateway. Our true destination was much farther, much harsher. From Yakutsk, the real adventure began. It was an 18-hour journey over a 900-kilometer stretch, on a legendary road known as the Road of Bones, built by Gulag prisoners, whose bones are said to be buried right beneath the permafrost. Our UAZ vehicle, an old but durable Soviet machine, was our only fortress against the outside world. Inside the vehicle, though the heater was running at full blast, the cold still crept in through every crack. The windows were covered in a thick layer of ice, which the driver had to constantly scrape away to see the road. The scenery outside was terrifyingly monotonous. Only snow, gaunt taiga trees covered in snow, and a white road stretching to infinity. The silence in the car was heavy, broken only by the growling engine and the sound of tires crunching on the snow. We spoke very little, each lost in our own thoughts, a mix of excitement and fear. The feeling of isolation grew more palpable. We were delving deep into the heart of winter, a place where nature does not welcome man. 18 hours passed like a century. Finally, at 2 a.m., under a faint moonlight and a sky strangely glittering with stars, our guide pointed ahead. Amidst the night and white snow, a few faint lights appeared. "Oymyakon," he said softly. "We've arrived. The coldest village in the world." The driver cut the engine. In that moment, absolute silence descended. It wasn't the silence of a quiet night. It was the silence of a frozen world. A silence so profound it had weight. The guide pointed to the digital thermometer mounted outside the vehicle. The bright red numbers glowed in the dark, like a warning from a frozen hell. 60.5 to 4. C. I took a deep breath inside the vehicle, trying to steel myself. I was wearing more than 20 layers of clothing, from thermal wear, wool, and fleece, to the outermost layer, a suit made entirely of reindeer fur, weighing nearly 14 kilograms in total. My Ushanka hat covered my ears, and my gloves and boots were also made of reindeer fur. I felt more like an astronaut than a documentary filmmaker, preparing to step onto another planet. And then, the car door opened. The first shock wasn't the sensation of cold. It was a full frontal assault on the senses. The air was so thick and arid it felt like I could touch it. It was like breathing in liquid nitrogen. Immediately, a violent, uncontrollable cough erupted from my chest. My lungs felt like they were being scorched by the dryness of the air. Next came the pain. Any millimeter of exposed skin, even the small gap between my goggles and hat, felt like being stabbed by 1,000 ice needles at once. The cold didn't seep in slowly. It attacked fiercely. The hair inside my nostrils froze instantly, and with every breath, I felt them prickling like sharp thorns inside. And then I heard it. A strange, rustling, dry sound echoed behind me and my companion. I turned around, startled, but there was nothing. The guide smiled, a difficult smile on his nearly frozen face. "Don't worry," he said, his voice muffled. "That's the sound of your breath. The warmth from your lungs meets the cold air and turns into ice crystals instantly." I couldn't believe it. The sound of life, of breath here sounded like rustling dry leaves. The village was submerged in an eerie beauty. Everything was coated in a layer of frost that sparkled under the moonlight. The wooden houses looked abandoned, not a soul in sight, not a sound to be heard. It felt as if time itself had stopped in this place. Even the power lines sagged under the weight of the thick ice. We decided to walk a short distance, just for about 15 minutes, to capture the first images. The phone I had just taken out of my pocket died within seconds. The camera, though well wrapped, also began to act strangely. The cold didn't just affect people and animals. It stopped everything from functioning. As we walked, I glanced at my cameraman. His eyelashes were completely covered in white ice crystals, looking as if they were decorated for a winter festival. A small droplet from his breath had frozen on his mustache, glittering like a tiny diamond. We tried to talk, but our lips were stiff, and the words came out with difficulty, disjointed. The cold began to burn my fingers, piercing through the thick gloves. I tried to adjust the camera, and in the brief moment my fingertip touched the cold metal. A sharp, shooting pain jolted through me like an electric shock. And then, the worst happened. We had been outside for about 15, maybe 20 minutes. I was engrossed in filming, trying to capture the deadly beauty of the village, when my friend suddenly pointed at my face, a look of horror on his. "Your nose!" he shouted, his voice cracking. I didn't understand. I raised my hand to touch my nose but felt nothing. It was completely numb. I took out my camera, switched to selfie mode, and looked at the screen. The tip of my nose had turned a deathly white as snow, standing out frighteningly against my cold, reddened face. "Is it frostbite?" I asked naively, my voice starting to tremble. "Oh my God, yes!" the guide exclaimed. "Get inside, quickly." In that moment, I felt a real sense of fear. Ice crystals had begun to form inside my cells. My tissue was dying. If I had stayed out there for 5 more minutes, my nose could have been permanently damaged. Or worse, had to be amputated. We rushed back to the car, but the nightmare wasn't over. When I tried to speak, I realized something was very wrong. I couldn't move the left side of my face. The muscles in my cheek, my lip, my eye felt frozen solid. I tried to smile, but only the right side of my mouth moved, creating a distorted, grotesque expression. I had temporary facial paralysis. The cold had attacked my nerves. I couldn't speak anymore. Sitting in the slowly warming UAZ, I looked out the window into the darkness of Oymyakon. The image of the frozen wolf returned to my mind. If you stop moving, you freeze. I hadn't stopped moving, but the cold had found a way to attack me anyway. It wasn't just a weather condition. It was a living entity, a ruthless and efficient predator. Those were just my first few hours in Oymyakon. The initial shock had taught me a costly lesson. This was no ordinary adventure. This was a fight for survival. A place where every decision, every minute spent outdoors, could be the difference between life and death. And my fight had only just begun.